You are listening to the Mad Music Marketing Minutes podcast with your host, Billy Gryzak. Brought to you by MusicMarketingMind.com. Personal music career support services. The show starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, welcome once again to the Mad Music Marketing Minutes podcast. I am your music marketing mind, Billy Gryzak. I am so excited today. I mean, I say that a lot on the podcast, but today I really am excited because not only am I going to be talking to someone who knows a lot about marketing and the music business, but someone that makes great music. And I got to be honest, I'm a fan. My son is a fan. We discovered this band called I Fight Dragons. I heard them on the CD Baby podcast one time. Heard one of their songs. I was hooked. I played the music for my son, who is a gamer, and instantly related to the gaming sounds in the music. And forget that. I mean, the songs are just fantastic. Anyway, so we're fans. So this is kind of a real exciting moment for me. And hopefully an early birthday present for my son. His birthday's coming up, and I'll be talking to one of his favorite band members from his favorite band. So anyway, let's get started today. Today I've got Brian from I Fight Dragons. Brian, tell us who you are. I kind of sort of already did your intro, but
Nice.
But go ahead and fill in the blanks. Let us know who you are, and I want to get into some of the techniques that you've used to help build up a fan base and stuff. But take it away.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you stole all my lines. Yeah, I'm Brian from I Fight Dragons. Yeah. I mean, so my story, I, like a lot of people, have done various things in music and tried to get things started. And my band I Fight Dragons started, back in 2008. We were kind of doing stuff and really released our first music and stuff in 2009. And it's been kind of a crazy journey from there. I've always tried to do sort of smart things and try new things in a music marketing standpoint. But since 2009, I mean, we started hitting the road and touring. We spent a couple years on Atlantic Records. No longer on Atlantic Records, but in 2013 we did a really successful Kickstarter that kind of blew all of our minds in terms of, I think we were hoping to raise like $20,000 and we ended up with 115, I think. So
Wow,
that's what we're doing now, is still working on that album. It's been, almost 9 months since the Kickstarter ended, and we're still furiously working away. And then we're going to be doing the Warped Tour again this summer, and it's an abbreviated version because it's been a huge, crazy 4 or 5 years since we started. But yeah, that's kind of my story.
Wow. How would you kind of describe your band and your music?
Sure, we're variously described as chiptune rock or occasionally sort of video game rock. It's rock music, with actual sort of pop rock songwriting, and then instead of keyboards or what you'd think of as keyboards in the sound, we use what's called chiptune, which is new music made on old video game sound cards. So that's kind of our fifth instrument there, 2 guitars, bass, drums, and chiptune. And so that's basically the basis of our sound.
That's amazing. Aside from the fact that you make awesome music, I'm always blown away by the things that you seem to do and the band does to attract fans and to also, gain new fans, communicate with the audience. And I'd say, as a music marketing person, that's probably the question on everybody's mind. I'm just starting out, or I've been doing it forever, but how do I communicate with my fans? How do I get people to the shows? How do I get them excited about my new music or my new merch or whatever? And
For sure.
It seems that you seem to have a great handle on that, and I was wondering if you would demystify a little of that.
If someone would demystify it for me, that'd be awesome. I'm super flattered that you'd say, I have a handle on it, but I think part of sort of my approach has been admitting that I don't have a handle on it, and sort of constantly trying to keep figuring it out, because it's also like trying to solve a problem that's constantly changing, you know?
Yeah.
The landscape, you know, talking to you now, like from talking with, you know, my bandmates and friends 5 years ago when I Fight Dragons was starting, it's a completely different landscape. I remember one of the main topics of conversation when we were starting I Fight Dragons was, you know, how we should best use MySpace. Because that was, you know, the most important and central element of any new band, was how you're going to get people to your MySpace page. And it's so funny. We laugh at it because, you know, within a year or two, that was basically the swift end of MySpace. But at the time, it was like, that was it, man. Like, if you were going to check out a new band, you went to their MySpace page. So literally, I mean, we spent a few $100 at the time having this awesome design group create a like flash game for our MySpace page that, you know, people who went to our page could play this little like dragon fighting game. You know, it's just funny how fast that stuff changes. But to me, I would say that's kind of been my guiding philosophy, if I've had one, is like not to try and be like to always be doing the cutting edge new thing, because I think that a lot of people you can end up wasting a lot of time, energy, money if you're constantly trying to chase the thing that's like brand new, but always trying to evaluate kind of like what's out there and how best to, you know, to drive the actual fundamentals of like connecting with people, either connecting with more people or connecting with people in a deeper way. I think those are both, you know, very awesome fundamental metrics to have for, you know, music marketing. Because I don't know, having spent a few years now in the traditional music industry, they have one metric, and that's sales. You know, how many people are downloading your album or buying your track or whatever it is. That's really the only number they look at. And I think that that's just wrong, especially when you're starting out. And if you're not going to be working at a like level where you're taking your song to radio and doing the sort of really expensive traditional music marketing, then I feel like the only thing you need to keep an eye on is how many people you're connecting with, and, you know, how deep your connections are with them. I feel like anything you can do that increases those two things is good. And in terms of the how of that, that's the part that constantly changes, because I mean, it will continue to constantly change. It's just there's no one right answer.
Right. Yeah, and of course now everything's gone so mobile, and
yeah,
and everybody wants everything, you know, yesterday, you know, on their mobile device. And I know
Spotify's a huge game changer in the past, like even the past year or two. You know, it's like it's just a different beast when people are. I know a lot more people that, you know, at first it was MySpace, and then after that, I'd say it was YouTube that people, you know, first went to be like, I heard of a new band, I'm going to Google them and look at some videos on YouTube. And now I feel like there's a bit more of, you know, I'm going to check, at least for Spotify subscribers, people are like, I'm going to check them out on Spotify. But it's a really different kind of interaction, you know, in those three interactions are hugely different in terms of, you know, getting to know a band or finding out about them. And it changes the whole dynamic.
You know what's really interesting about a few episodes ago, instead of interviewing like well-known people or rock stars such as yourself, I took what I thought was a unique approach, and I actually interviewed 3 teenage musicians that are like just starting out for their career. I had one fella's 15 years old. He's a monster guitar player from Nashville, named awesome. Andrew James, just amazing. I had a fella, Mitchell T. DeRoy, who just recorded his first EP, and my son, who's 17, and inspired by you, recorded 3 albums using nothing but an iPod as his studio, and he released 3 albums
nice.
of like gamer-oriented music.
Cool.
Yeah, under the name Podperson, PODPERSIN. You know, so yeah, and the thing is, though, when you listen to these guys talk, one of the things I asked them was, you know, how do you find music? You know, what does music discovery mean for an artist or a teenager these days?
Sure.
And basically, Spotify was number 1.
Really?
Yep. YouTube,
there you go.
YouTube was number 2.
Okay.
And check this out. Number 3 was video games. Like music in video games, and that is really like insanity. And
I believe it, man. I mean, the soundtracks to games, you also a lot of the soundtracks just they don't end up licensing that many songs.
Mm-hmm.
So if you play for any length of time, you end up hearing the same. It ends up being a little bit like being in rotation on radio if you're, playing a racing game and you continue to hear, I don't know, like Motorhead's The Ace of Spades over again. The song's going to be stuck in your head.
Actually, if you get a chance to hear the podcast, my son did a big I Fight Dragons shout out when he was talking about Spotify. He was
Nice.
he goes, yeah, man, I find all the best bands on Spotify. Like I Fight Dragons. If you haven't heard them, get Spotify. Listen to them right now.
Nice. That's awesome.
But, so music discovery has changed quite a bit. Now with Beats music and coming up, I have no idea what that's going to do.
I mean, it's supposed to be like a Spotify knockoff, right? Or a Spotify competitor, at least. So I'd be surprised if it did anything very different. But yeah, who knows?
Yeah,
you never know.
You never know. And then there's some people out there that are saying, like, the end of Facebook is coming. It's another MySpace. And, I'll believe it when I see it. You know what I'm
I was
saying?
going to say, man, Mark Zuckerberg's a lot smarter than Tom. No offense to Tom. I don't even know his last name. I just know his name was Tom.
All I know, he was my first friend. That's all I remember.
There you go. Exactly. I don't know. Facebook is. I think he's enmeshed it into the fabric of life in a smart enough way that I really don't think. And it continues to evolve. That's the key thing. You look at Facebook year to year. I mean, and what they always have moved in such smart ways. They could have been undercut by Twitter, but then they changed their entire model to be much more sort of Twitter-like in terms of status updates and all of that. So it's like, I don't see that collapsing anytime soon unless they kind of end up sort of stopping their evolution.
Yeah,
but so far they've been pretty good at evolving.
Yeah. Well, let's get back a little bit though. Go right to the beginning. What do you think is if we're a band just starting out or somebody that has ignored marketing, which I don't know how you can do that. All right. What do you think, like the very first thing that everybody needs to have just to get started, like to start marketing their band? What are your thoughts?
I honestly tend to get in trouble when I talk about this stuff because I think the first thing you need to start off with is like a realistic view of where your music fits into a larger context. Because I firmly believe that people should make the music that makes, that moves them. You can only really be successful, I think, making music that you really love, at least on some level. So that said, there's then a big question of the music that you really love, like how many other people out there would also love it. And it's not that, it's in an ideal world, you love the music, you love music that millions of other people could love, right? But like for most of us, that's just not true. I know it's not really true for me that like the music I make, it's not going to be, on the radio next to Rihanna or whatever. So it's understanding kind of where the music you love fits into a larger context, I think is really important, because if you don't start there, like every context and every different, I mean, you can call it a market, you can call it a context, you can call it a scene, whatever it is, like that's, I think the only way you can know what to do is to start with, what world you're working in. And I think a lot of people kind of start diving right into tactics before thinking about strategy, in that way. Like it starts with should I be using MySpace or should I be using, Spotify or Twitter? How should I use this? And I think the first question should be, where do you fit? Because that will often, I mean, like, if in your genre, everyone uses Twitter, like, I mean, that's lots of the kind of younger, kids that talking about Warped Tour and the other bands there, like those bands all do like incredibly intense social stuff because so many of those younger kids are just on social all the time. Like they need that intense flow of tweets and updates and, that interaction. But like for other kinds of music, that's not necessarily going to be the right approach. I think like the first step in some ways is know thyself and know thy music and know thy context, really.
Right. And then know thy ideal fan.
Yeah, I mean, so that all comes along with it, right? I don't want to get too like marketing speaky about it,
oh,
like
no,
persona or like any of those like actual marketing terms they use, because I don't really think that way. Like as a musician, I don't like break it down in a marketing sense. I like to sort of think of the marketing as another extension of the band's art. Like you can only do the marketing that works for your band. I think people run into trouble when they start trying to do something that feels false or that feels like forced. So, I think that's where it starts in a lot of ways, is understanding where you are, where the music you make is, and yeah, exactly what you said. Your ideal fan, like who are the people out there that would actually enjoy your music, and how do you connect with them?
Bingo, that's it. And for my money, that is the holy grail. If anybody wants to know the secret to success, I think that's honestly right there. You can stop right there and do that for the rest of your life. Know what you do what you love, find other people that love what you do, and I think everything else sort of will take care of itself. I really do.
Yeah, I would add one more thing, which is don't quit. Because there's still plenty of people making amazing music that, like, depending on how you look at it, deserves an audience or would connect with a certain audience. But it's still that, just because knowing that equation is far different than living that equation. And it's still, even if you have all the pieces in place, it's not going to just pop, and it's still, no matter what, it's an incredibly long road. And understanding, I would say a lot of times the difference between people that work long term and the people that don't, are that the people that don't give up at some point.
Well, I still think that's a matter of doing what you truly love. My benchmark has always been, am I doing something I would do absolutely for free regardless? You know what I mean?
Sure.
If I feel that I'd be doing this anyway, whether I can make a living at it or not, then I know I'm doing the right thing. Does that make sense to you?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, although I will say there's a tricky side. This is just a personal thing of mine. Because knowing that it's going to be work, like I think sometimes when you say, like, I would do it for free, and I do really at the core do feel the same way. But there's something pernicious about saying, I would do it for free, because other people will start to try and take advantage of you. If you go to other people in the music industry at large, starting with your first offer is, I'll do it for free. It's funny how quickly you get taken advantage of. And then the other part being, nobody is successful 100% of the time. Even the people that are doing really well are going to have really rough patches and rough stretches. And if your only motivation is, I do this because I love it, I don't know. I feel like nobody loves it 100% of the time. You've got to have some kind of, like, whether it's stubbornness or, just refusal to quit. I feel like there's got to be some extra ingredient that, and I say that agreeing with you 100%, that there's just got to be a layer of, I'm doing it because I have to, not necessarily because it's fun all the time.
Well, loving it doesn't necessarily mean that it's fun. I mean, it's like a relationship. You can love your wife, but some days,
it's a real world thing. It's a real life relationship. It doesn't spend all of its time, at its peak. Otherwise, it wouldn't. Otherwise there wouldn't be a peak. It's life.
So, tell me something. Website. How important is a website for an artist or a band, in your opinion, like, as opposed to just having a Facebook or something like that?
For sure. I think even in the years I've been doing it, my personal answer to this question has changed back and forth lots of times. I mean, when when I first started, really seriously approaching this stuff, your MySpace was your be all end all. That was what you had. But then, sometime in 2009, 2010, MySpace kind of imploded, and Facebook wasn't really there yet as a spot. So, there was a big vacuum that you kind of needed to have a website to be doing, an email list or something. And also, the collapse of MySpace was also a big lesson. If you don't have your own presence, these platforms do collapse from time to time. And if all you had was a giant MySpace following, you're left with no way to really reach your fans, because no one goes on MySpace anymore.
That is so true. I'll tell you what, Brian, before we move on, we have a new sponsor, Only Sky Artist, and we wanted to turn you over to Neil right now. He has some information that I think is pretty relevant to what we're talking about. Go ahead, Neil.
Hey, thanks, Billy. Neil here from Only Sky Artist, and Janine and I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for letting us sponsor the Mad Music Marketing Minutes podcast. Hopefully we can team up here and help some artists really hone and sharpen their marketing chops. So today I have a quick tip for you, and that's about the first rule of direct-to-fan music marketing. And that rule would be have a clear call to action. And specifically, I want to talk about your website and what is the purpose of your website. Every website needs a purpose, and far too many artists have way too much information on their website. They suffer from what I call puke-itis. They just puke up everything they've ever thought about onto their homepage of their website, and it really overwhelms people. So today, why don't you just take a minute to go to your own website and pretend it's the first time you've ever been there. Think like a fan. That's what I like to say. Think like a fan. Show up at your website and see, what does this website say to me? What am I supposed to do here? And if you're doing a really great job with your website, the one thing your website should say is sign up for my email list. Because I think that's the number one purpose for an independent artist to have a website, and that is to grow an email database. So head on over to your own website today, take a look at it, and see, what does it say to you? What are you supposed to do when you land on your homepage? And see if it says, sign up for my email list, or does it say, confuse, overwhelm, way too much information? Hey, if you want to learn about the other 5 rules to direct-to-fan music marketing, head on over to onlyskyartist.com/Billy, and you can download a PDF there that will explain all 6 rules to direct-to-fan music marketing. Again, that's onlyskyartist.com/Billy. Now back to you.
All right, thanks, Neil. So, Brian, we were talking about MySpace. So, what happened after MySpace?
So, but then I think for a couple years it was sort of all Facebook. You know, like the Facebook page got powerful enough that you could use that as your primary interaction tool, the way that a lot of people kind of used to use their MySpace page. But in the last couple years, Facebook has intelligently from their end, started to throttle their free services. Basically, with promoted posts and stuff, you used to, anytime you posted something, it used to automatically go out to anyone that liked your page. And now, in order to reach your entire, fan base of people that like your page, you've got to pay. A promoted post essentially is paying for something that used to be free. And so that stuff will continue, Facebook, and that's their job. Obviously, they don't work for you; they work for their shareholders at this point. They're a public company, and so I think as they've sort of used EdgeRank and promoted posts and stuff to throttle down your access to the people that like your Facebook page, it's once again become apparent that it's really important for you to have your own site. To me, in my opinion, primarily to collect email addresses, because that's something that having an email list that you use intelligently and sparingly is that just can't be taken away. Email is something that is, at least for the near future, not going anywhere in the way that, or not going to sort of change against you the way that Facebook or MySpace or Twitter or YouTube all can at the drop of a hat.
All right, now you've gotten to the nugget, the gold nugget, the thing that I am really interested in hearing from you today versus a few years ago. You were really preaching that email list. You had some and you had some great strategies that you actually shared on the CD Baby podcast.
Yep.
I for the next 5 minutes or so, if you can riff on any advice, any ideas, anything that can help get these artists off their butts, collecting email addresses, finding a way to actually collect them, and any best practices or any thoughts on using it and staying. And the word that I want to just tattoo on everybody's forehead is consistency.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. You've said a lot right there. So when we started, and I think this happens to a lot of people when they start off, you want to have you're going to start with a small audience, obviously, and you want to kind of super serve them, I think when we started our email list, we're putting out content every week or two. And that was cool because we had a couple hundred people on there. And then, it was a big milestone. We hit 1,000 people. And those people, especially because it's new, it's exciting, they all wanted to be super involved. And that was a big part of how we kind of got started, was creating that community around an email list where we would interact and give news of the band, but also send out a lot of free tracks and bonus material. and this was sort of, the caveat here is, we were doing a lot of this 5 years ago, and the media landscape is totally different now in the sense that that was before anyone had really broken on YouTube. So there were people using YouTube in smart ways, but now I think a lot of that functionality comes from YouTube in terms of like new stuff, and it's just a more multifaceted sort of media landscape. But I think that it's always going to be, and we kind of had to get away from this for a few years because of the way labels work. But the instant we were off the label, I went right back to it, which is, give away your best work in response for an email subscription, and then treat that email subscription with huge respect. And that changes over time, because now, we have, 20, 30,000 people on the email list. And so it's not something we can just, knock every week, and be giving people stuff, because it's just a lot more people, and plenty of them are, we've been around a few years, so they, it's not quite as this new thing, and not all of them want to hear from us, every day. So it's important to kind of speak in different channels in the right way. Like, we post to Facebook every day. Actually, truthfully, lately I've been really big on blog. It's kind of funny to say because it seems like such an antiquated thing, but especially as Facebook has, like I was saying, throttled down their access to the people that like your page, I think it's really important to have persistent content. An email list is great, and social is great, but for people that are hopping on late, for somebody that comes and finds out about I Fight Dragons today and has no clue about the 5 years we've already been out there doing stuff and our 3 albums and, all kinds of stuff, how are they going to actually learn about the band? That becomes a really big, especially for anyone approaching things in a long-term sense, that becomes a really big question. And I think lately I've come back around to the idea of a blog as just a really great way of having persistent content, because you can't really search, for a band's old tweets, and you can read, you can read the Twitter feed, you can read the Facebook page news feed, but like, it's not actually going to give you a good record of who this band is and where they've been and sort of their perspective on stuff. So lately my preferred sort of method has been a blog, and has been, daily posts, and as much as possible trying to get to what you said, which is absolutely true, which is consistency. It's so hard. I struggle with that all the time, because also like consistency in marketing, and consistency in, artistic production sometimes can feel like one, robbing from Peter to pay Paul or whatever, like you're taking away anytime you're spending so much consistent effort, are you taking effort from somewhere else? And I feel like I've kind of wandered off onto a tangent here, but I feel like some of the best music marketing thoughts are the ones that combine consistent art making with consistent sort of marketing messaging, ways to actually, like in the early days of our email list, we would, make new songs all the time, or new covers and tracks, and email them out for free. And so that was like a big part of our, what we did, was making new stuff, artistically fulfilling stuff, and then using that to help kind of grow things.
Wow.
I think I just like sort of wandered around there, hitting on like 5 different important topics.
No, welcome to the Mad Marketing Minutes, whatever the show's called. All of a sudden, I can't remember. I mean, that's the format here, man. It's like a think tank conversation, and I love this, and I love the stuff that you're sharing so candidly with me and the audience. Awesome, man. You're great.
Yeah, I've never sort of I'm I'm constantly sort of thinking about this stuff myself, in terms of how to balance, especially if you're an indie act. And it's kind of funny because now, having spent a few years on a label, like it was way worse. You'd think is like, and I thought as a person doing it all myself that the goal is to get to a point where you can hire people to do certain things for you, and then you can focus all your time on making the music. But I kind of had a rude awakening, which was that if you're not going to work, the traditional system is built around music sales marketed through like big, blunt instruments like the radio or TV or, publicity or things that like reach broadcast audiences and sell music. And if you're not working in that system, if you are kind of an indie artist and you're working on the road or you're working on the internet or spots that are sort of less sort of blunt, I don't know how else to say, that are more sort of specific, no one's ever going to be able to do it for you. Like the music industry, traditional music industry, is really, really good at maximizing broadcast marketing, whether it's TV or radio or publicity or, that working that entire machine. The people there are incredibly good at it. And so if you get to the point where that's what you need, they're absolutely the people you want working on your team. But like for us, we weren't, we're still a small band that in the grand scheme of things that had some successes, but certainly not, that sort of broadcast. You weren't seeing us, at the Grammys or whatever your example of sort of mainstream music industry exposure is. So like anytime someone was hired to do something for us, they did a worse job than I did, and it wasn't even their fault. It's just like, inevitably, if you're a band that it has more specific appeal, and is not necessarily working in the broad sense of things, you're probably going to know better yourself what needs to be done. And that's sort of a trade-off and a hard thing, as someone who's an artist and doesn't necessarily think of themselves as wanting to be their own, marketing director and all of that stuff. And I certainly, that would have been me when I first started. And now I'm kind of warming up to the idea that the art is the marketing is the art, that the thing itself and doing something in a creative way. And like the band is the art in some ways, building a story and a musical journey, however you want to,
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's like it's all the art. I think the successful DIY indie artist just understands, or maybe does understand and just does it, that you find you find the art. Are you still there?
Yeah, I think I lost you for about 20 seconds.
Okay.
Back.
I think that the DIY artist, the indie artist today finds the art in the marketing, the art in the relationships, the art in the music, the art in the consistency. It's like it's all art. If it becomes work, then there's no passion. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. I mean, yes and no, because I would once again put out there that like it's always work. Art is work, and that it's this funny like balance of that's my opinion at that point, but that like art is work, and the willingness to the true artists are the infantrymen that show up every day and keep humping. Even when they don't feel like it, and they just kind of have to do it, and they do whatever is necessary to keep making it because they have to.
I agree totally. I really do. Well, I'll tell you what, the show, we're coming down to the stretch here, and to be honest with you, I could talk all day. Maybe you might be interested in doing this again sometime in the future. That would be really cool.
Definitely.
Because, I mean, there's lots of things we haven't talked about yet. But
yeah, it's true.
But I'll tell you what,
so much there.
The most important thing that we haven't talked about yet is we want to know where we can find you, where we can find the band, how to connect with you. Basically, tell us whatever you want to tell us right now about what you're up to and where people can find you. Or if you don't mind, if somebody has a question and want to follow up with you, where to reach you.
Yeah, well, so we are right now working on our next album that we funded on Kickstarter. That's our biggest thing. It's available for pre-order now. I mean, if you go to our website, iFightDragons.com, as we talked about, you could get our latest album for free if you sign up for our email list. And also we're going on the Vans Warp Tour this summer. We just announced that this week. So the album will come out and we'll hit the road. It'll be a crazy year. And if you got follow-up questions, feel free to tweet. I'm at iFightDragons. I run our main account, or on our Facebook page, or even just email. I think we have email contact on our website as well at iFightDragons.com.
Too cool, man. Well, listen, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I'm Billy Gryzak, your music marketing mind, and I have to say goodbye. Brian, say bye.
Bye.
Music Marketing Minute.